Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 12th CTO Roundtable session, Stormproof Security Strategy for Your Digital Product. This is the last Roundtable session this year, and I hope you will all enjoy it. So during this session, I'm going to discuss with the panel fundamental aspects of security, which, in my opinion, all companies should have in place. So the first one, I would like to talk about building a security awareness in a company. So I'm going to ask my guests to share their knowledge and give us some hints about it. Then I would like to talk a little bit about defining a security standards. So I want to discuss what kind of mistakes to avoid when defining them. And also I'd like to talk about the security in software architecture. So how should we approach to the security aspect when building digital products? So in my opinion, a lot of interesting discussion ahead of us. So looking forward to have this discussion. And before we move it to the first question, I have two organizational announcements. So if you would like to join the discussion, please ask questions during this session by typing them in Q&A tab. So rather than chat tab, where I can miss some questions. So there is additionally, that's important. I asked my colleague Adam Polak from the TSH, who is a head of Node.js, to moderate this chat and also to moderate Q&A section. From this place, I would like to thank you, Adam, for your help. And the second announcement is that a recorded version of this webinar will be available, so don't worry if you miss out on something. So let's start. Today, I have a pleasure to host this conversation with very experienced panel. So first, I would like to welcome Paula Januszkiewicz, founder and CEO at CQURE. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. My second panelist, Mateusz. He's an expert behavioral AI at Revelok company. Hello, Mateusz.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
I also invited Marek, our CTO at the Software House. Hi, Marek.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you.
And my name is Dawid Krala. I'm the Quality of Service Director at the TSH, and I'm your host today. Thank you. So before we move forward, let's get to know our guests a little bit better. So Paula, as I mentioned, she's a founder and CEO at CQURE company, a company which have been providing cybersecurity services and also trainings since 2008. So well-established company. Paula is not only a great speaker that engages and inspires participants, but also have a deep knowledge, technical knowledge in the field of cybersecurity. Paula has performed hundreds of security projects, including those for governmental organizations, right? And what's more important, Paula loves motivating people, so everyone can always expect some thoughtful ideas and interesting arguments. So I'm very happy to have you here, Paula.
Yeah,
so if you could just add a couple of more words from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I could really introduce myself better. I think that's great. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I'm running CQURE for 13 years right now. Who would ever predict that? It's quite a long time. But one thing I can say for sure that cybersecurity is challenging every day, and even within the past 13 years, this has been a very exciting journey every day. Because the vulnerabilities, they pop up pretty much as a surprise every single day. And my background is pretty straightforward. Even though I've got a business role within the company, because I'm the CEO, I'm delivering the penetration tests. Also, I do work with incidents with our customers, and I also work with forensics. So very much on the ground with the technical stuff, but also trying to have this business overview, what our customers need as well. So absolutely pleasure to be here and share my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. That's impressive experience. So my second panelist, Mateusz. Mateusz is responsible for following the data as an expert behavioral AI in Revolog company. So his area of interest is ethical data processing, also behavioral biometrics, and continuous authentication. In the past, Mateusz used to run a behavioral biometrics startup as CEO. He's also a security geek, as he says for himself, and with a strong belief that making the world a better place is possible. So, Mateusz, if you could just add a few more words about
So I'm much more on the product side. If you're thinking about where to position myself, I've been working in multiple cybersecurity products when I've been working with Samsung R&D for a few years. Right now, I'm on the white hat side of life because I'm providing the anti-fraud solutions that are based on artificial intelligence, mostly to the banks. And it includes a lot of different techniques when we're fighting against the cyber criminals. So it's an arms race and we don't really have time to wait. And this behavioral biometric part that is related with detecting, is it really you or somebody else on the other side, is something that really turns me on because of the data perspective. And it's also very sensitive because that helps to protect people that don't really know much about cybersecurity. So it protects the people despite them not knowing what is really happening behind the scenes. That's more or less the mission. And as I'm more on the product side, I'm also supporting multiple startups on building the solutions that are being provided to the market. And cybersecurity out there is one of the most important points most of the time, as you know, some of the startups do forget about that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this introduction, Mateusz.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Marek. Marek is an entrepreneur and CTO at the software house. He is responsible for more than 150 experienced, talented IT specialists. Marek is a storyteller, he's a mentor and scalability expert who actually successfully builds bridges between technology and business. And he's also a security enthusiast, and that is the reason that I wanted to have him today during this session. So welcome, Marek.
Yeah, hi, nice to be here. Thank you for your invitation. Yeah, so I am supposed to be this business guy, this maybe not so much techie person who should maybe ask some questions rather than provide answers. But we'll see how it goes. Well, I'm very glad to be here, and I'm kind of overwhelmed by the rest of the guests and their experience and knowledge. So let's see what can I bring to the table.
Thank you very much, Marek. And my name is Dawid Krala once again. In TSH for more than 3 years already, and for all my professional life, I've been working with quality assurance aspects, right? So I know some basic stuff of the security, of course, but yeah, I'm looking forward to listen you to get as much as I can from your experience. So I'm really happy to be host of this conversation. So let's start. Before I will ask the first question, I would like to share one slide with you that I found during my preparation to this webinar. I would like to highlight the influence of the cybercrime for the global economy. And what I found is the information that by the end of 2021, so this year, the cybercrime is expected to cost the world $6 trillion. It's a huge amount, and you can see how it's been decomposed for the weeks, month, hour, and even seconds. And quite interesting fact that by 2025, the figure will climb to 10.5 trillion, which is huge amount of money. So of course, none of us wants to be a part of this statistic, hence today's discussion will help you to build the right security strategy in your companies based on the experience of my guests. So let's start the first question. Actually not. So I just want to, this is some kind of a hot topic, and I put this slide actually just to discuss about the recent vulnerability found in Apache library log4j. This is a critical vulnerability. At least what I got in information, it allows remote code execution. Hence, it got the highest score of the CVSS. So it's a common vulnerability scoring system, 10 out of 10, which is the highest one. So in fact, I believe now the whole world is busy to fix this vulnerability at their side. So my first question beyond the general topic and agenda that I had is to you, Paula, what we're supposed to do in the situation that, let's say, our organization is being impacted by this vulnerability, how I should behave, what kind of plan should I put in place?
Yeah, so there are actually two ways to answer this question. One is, of course, purely technical. What kind of things we're supposed to do and upgrade to the certain version and change a couple of settings in logs in the configuration and so on. But when we think about the more like a umbrella approach to the organization security, there are, I think, 4 ways we should think about while we're planning for that kind of vulnerabilities also in future. So one thing is, of course, that we should build our organization for the zero trust. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when we exploit certain server, we should, in some sense, sleep well. We should not have a situation ideally, of course, in the organization that when our certain identity from that server is gone, it means that hackers are able to spread easily in the organization. So even though our server is impacted, then it's impacted only in this single place, and we are not able to perform the lateral movement. So what will be the key here to think about is that if you are in a situation where that vulnerability is exploited, what will be important is to review the logs, whatever we got in whatever the situations we process them, where and how our identity could be used further in the organization, because that is what would be important right now for our business. So one thing is, of course, a fix, but the second thing is the further steps, so the classic incident response, where we could overview what potentially else happened. Of course, when we think about some other aspects here, I would say that there's one general rule of keeping our devices healthy and managed, and with all the solutions that prevent exploitation amongst various even unknown vulnerabilities, because that's clearly the case. But of course, it's not always that perfect in the organization. So incident response procedure, well implemented right now. And if it's about the fix, upgrading to the version, and also changing the configuration settings that are also recommended. Happy, of course, to put them on the chat if you wish.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with that. I hope that this might be or will be helpful for some of our participants, in case just to ensure that they will follow or they did exactly the same. So perfect.
Just if I can add a little bit out there, this is for me a great phenomenon to see as different kind of industries are reacting to what is happening. You can clearly see those that are having vendors that are trying to follow up with their software development lifecycle, and they're struggling to provide the latest fix. And I'm quite sure it will take them some time, especially those that are having quite legacy systems. As you know, the vulnerability was out there since 2015, if I'm not wrong. And then we're having multiple companies that are providing mitigations like web application firewalls, or web application firewalls as a service, that are saying, hey, if you're using us, then you're much more secure. So I do believe that maybe this will be just another spark that might change the way that some of the companies are approaching the vulnerability management, because one of the things that is very important is also monitoring where do you have Log4j used, because I do believe that some of the people might not really know how many of the components that they're providing are really affected. So parts of the CI/CD or generally the software development lifecycle might change after that, and I do believe that might be one of the best lessons learned for those.
Yeah, this is something that I call observability. This is more connected with DevOps, but actually this is also DevSecOps as well, right? So the observability of the whole system, and what libraries do you actually use, right? And what do you actually have in there? And that's well, even right now, we are based mostly on Node.js and React, so it doesn't seem to be really a Log4j right? But for my case, for example, I'm now for 2 days asking people around on Slack, hey, do you maybe know if we are using Log4j anywhere? Right, so we don't have like this one place where actually you can find for the company in global what kind of libraries we are using, right? And this is something this is some lessons learned for the future to actually have it.
Mm-hmm. So from what you are saying, I'm just thinking if building the right security awareness in an organization might help with dealing with such vulnerabilities or the impact of such vulnerabilities. What do you think about it, Paula?
Well, it depends what awareness we are talking about. Absolutely, when we talk about the awareness within the IT security team, or in general providing them good training, that would make them to understand what does it mean really to have vulnerability, regardless what kind of vulnerability here we are talking about. Then that's this thing that the companies should maybe now rethink, that maybe it's worth investing, because nothing gets outdated as fast as cybersecurity knowledge. Of course, there is a background for that we all need to have, but there are new solutions coming, and there are new approaches that hackers invent. Sometimes it's not a breathtaking technology that's introduced, but that is something that makes us grow. And this has been always like that, especially at the very beginning of the cybersecurity journey. Sorry for bringing on the table the old times, but when we were dealing with like NT40, breaking in the system was super easy, but it became easy. Yeah, so it was not meant to be easy. So that is basically how we grow in cyber. Of course, it's much more difficult right now, but it's a similar flavor here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So just one more question. If you would share your experience, how to build the security awareness in a company that produces digital products, what would you suggest? What kind of range of the information you would put in place?
Well, first of all, security must be built in the process. Yeah, so that there are many points of entry for that process. Not only we are learning how to grow a secure code, how to develop a secure code, but also we are learning the process that code's supposed to be tested every certain time at the certain product releases. So that here it's very specific for certain products, organizations, the way how we work, and so on. But in general, security should be there to do one thing that I'm really fond of, and that's called minimizing the risk.
Okay.
So we are simply never able to fix or write an application that's going to be unbelievably safe, but we are minimizing the risk so that hacker is going to pick just someone else, because it's going to take too long for someone to access this application, and they have to live as well. They have to survive, earn money. So if, for example, our application will not be worth it, they're just going to choose some other path, and that's the point.
This is a really valid point what you just said. Mateusz, how do you see this? The building.
I would like just to refer that point to the Log4Shell that is just happening, because if you're thinking about the low-hanging fruit that Paula mentioned, there are already multiple bots that are scanning for the Log4Shell around the internet. Whenever you're not a low-hanging fruit right now, it's not good not to be the low-hanging fruit, because then you're the next target. So there might be other reasons why you're being targeted, because there is money or there is something important that's happening in your system. And then I believe, like, from the perspective of awareness, is like, this is when you're talking to the cybersecurity people, they will say, okay, it happened before, it's just another package, it was happening. The point is that the processes or the companies, they're learning to react, and they survive or they not. I've had a chance to talk to some people that were actually working as a cybersecurity professionals for a companies that doesn't exist anymore, because in some of the situations like that, the companies failed. So the resilience of the companies, so they failed to, for example, patch on time. So they were victims of ransomware, they were victims of different kind of hacks, and at the end of the day, their business died. So I do believe this today, as we were talking about the Log4Shell, as we were talking about another spark that might ignite and make people think, hey, how many applications are impacted? How are we and our businesses impacted? Might start the new reconfiguration, the rethinking of the software development lifecycle. or generally, the bigger organization you are, the more vendors you have to deal with. And then we're looking into this all interesting agreements that you're having. When you're gonna have your next update, is it gonna be provided for free, or there's gonna be a paid upgrade? And so there's always this window when you're vulnerable, or you can mitigate it or not. Will you shut down the system? I do believe that it's a critical moment, and it's amazing moment to see how different companies react, because from that we can learn how mature are the organizations from the cybersecurity perspective, and there will be many lessons learned. I'm quite sure of that, and I do believe we can think about the word about that will happen after the Log4Shell, that will have multiple changes in the way the people are building products, and the awareness that is also changing, because as it happened in the past, also with the shell shock, with other vulnerabilities, there will be lessons learned, and there will be businesses that are no longer there. So yeah, that's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mateusz, for this interesting point of view. Marek, what about you? Because as you said, you are a person from business, right? So you have a
so I will add on top of that maybe the perspective that for me security starts with people. That probably it's easier to hack the people than the system, but okay. And we always start with making people aware of a topic. That's thing number one when we are introducing a new change. Is first naming it, so putting any kind of name on that, then making people aware that this topic even exists, right? And then start on doing this kind of processes and stuff around it. But the first step is to actually make sure that all the people are on the same page, and they also treat this topic as an important one. One is this famous people hacking, that actually it's easier to go through some social engineering run, but also even software developers, they need to be sometimes aware that this topic exists, and actually the software they are making is also part of this whole security circle, right?
Yeah. Marek, thank you that you raised this point, because I just want to add to this the information that when I was preparing to this session, I found an information everywhere in an internet that the people are the weakest link in cybersecurity, right? And this is what you said. So one more question to building this security awareness. I believe this is a simple answer, but I would like to get it from you. Who in a company should be involved in building this awareness?
Yeah, I'm happy to kickstart actually, because I'm the big fan of technology that helps people to not to be really worried about cybersecurity. So my point is going to be here that we've been stressing out users, and people / users, that's how we call them in IT, right? So we've been actually stressing out users, employees of organizations, that they should be knowing things around cybersecurity, even though in some sense it's not really within their scope. So imagine someone working in finance department, HR department, to deal with computer and not really to mention cybersecurity. And I don't want to be really here, but that's just simply not their job. It's like our job. It's not to know all the details for hiring people and all the HR rules, law, and so on. I have no idea about that. So here we go. So this is the same situation. Of course, there's the statement that cybersecurity is a responsibility of everyone, and I'm a big fan of it. Because everybody should have in mind, in heart, the fact that cybersecurity can affect not only organizations' data, but also my personal life. So my identity is going to be stolen. My LinkedIn account is going to be overtaken, and then I will not be able to communicate with my colleagues anymore, and that's going to spread, and that's even worse. That's why it's my responsibility to protect it so that they are not affected. Yeah, because the simple personal related attack could affect also organization security, because someone might be browsing LinkedIn account at work and we're going to receive a link. So that there's this whole chain we can imagine. Yeah, but my point over there is that we should, especially for future, rethink how we can make cybersecurity to be more approachable for users. And not only is, of course, everybody's security, but there's this new statement that we should grow in a company something that we call right now digital empathy, or in general cybersecurity empathy, which technically builds up a technology that is approachable for users, and it does not make them to be stressed about like steps they do, because they might not even know that they step into phishing. So why don't we just back them up with technology that even though they click on a link, nothing happens, and they feel comfortable that yes, they're going to do their best to not to do it, but if they do it, it's okay too.
Oh, this is interesting approach. Yeah.
So in general, like technology's role is support how people work. That's for sure. Not to build a demand for them, yet another demand to make their job more difficult. And security's role is to safeguard the digital assets they are using for their work, with as little impact as possible for what they do. So that is kind of like my vision on how the well-designed cybersecurity awareness should work in the organization. And they are already working, especially in the COVID times, in stressful conditions. And in general, the point is that IT systems, they must allow for them to work in comfort, in a psychological comfort, and at the same time assure the good security with obviously their help, and in the places, of course, where they can implement that help. So maybe a little bit not that technology related answer here, but that is something that I would love to see, because I think that will be the way to make it actually even more effective.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience and your opinion on that. Mateusz, Marek, do you want to add something to this?
Just a little bit. I do believe we're adding layers and layers of digital protections between the people and the hacks that are happening, and more or less what is happening, we're trying to avoid the impact, because if you're thinking about the role-based access control, about the zero trust that is getting a lot of hype right now, it's all about demystifying the impact that might happen on the organization widely. So I do believe that humans are making errors, and they will keep making errors regardless of the training. It doesn't mean we shall stop training them, talking about it, or sharing the interesting things that are happening, because more often than not, I found that people are getting really into like, hey, what does it mean like Log4Shell can impact the Tesla or something like that? When the things are getting real, people pay their attention, and whenever they're paying attention, they're getting into the topic. So I would say some of the trainings that I've seen, I've went through myself, they're not really good, and people are getting bored. That will be one thing that is on the empathy side from my perspective. And the other solution will be like going towards all of these, overly complicated, but really needed system to make the adaptive risk management. So the zero trust, role-based access control, and so on. And as we are seeing a lot of as-a-service applications that are built like very, very flat, and they are adapted because we got this digital transformation that goes throughout the multiple organizations. And then we're finding out, okay, in the HR system, it's great to have these multiple roles and multiple types of accesses, but in this application, everybody gets similar access. And there are multiple issues around that. And I do believe that is something that will be changing over the time, but we just need to wait a little bit more for the zero trust hype to become bigger and become something that is really implemented by more and more as a service companies. So I do see, just a summary, I do see that there is more technology between the problems and the humans, and we're trying to solve it that way. But as you can see, it's not always working, as phishing is still the king as in regards to going for the lowest hanging fruit.
Of course. Thank you. So Marek, anything to add?
No.
That's okay.
Yeah, well
So when I'm listening to you, one thing comes to my mind: security standards, some procedures, checklists. So is it something that will work in a company, or what kind of? The second question is, what kind of mistakes we should avoid with defining this kind of standards? So Paula.
Yeah, that's a like very nice and long subject, that's for sure. Because in cybersecurity in general, we have no standards whatsoever. Of course, we've got some regulations and recommendations and so on, but there is no like a list, right, to implement. Yeah. So that's a bit of a case. Of course, we might design the standards list within our organization, but there's going to be a standards list that's organization specific.
Yeah.
And this is basically what we opt for. So we want to have things standardized. We want to have templates. We want to have certain ways how we are implementing systems. Yeah. So that's what creates our standard. But in general, it's like with a little bit with the GDPR. So GDPR says something generic, and that's a kind of a standard in some sense, but then we are interpreting it in our own way. And that's kind of how we perceive standard in cybersecurity. There are a couple of things that should definitely become a standard, but all of these things depend on budget, depend on how organization is created. I started with a budget here because all of these things at the end depend on budget. But as well, we could have, for example, some like basic steps, for example, for securing workstations that we should implement. For example, blocking the traffic from executables that we don't know. In general, allow listing / whitelisting, and not even allowing executables that we don't know to run. So these are the standards, but it's really hard to create a standard that will be applicable for all of the organizations.
Okay, so this needs to be company specific, right?
Right, with a certain core that that designs this good security practice. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Mateusz. Is there anything else we should consider by defining standards?
I do believe there are multiple standards that are not relevant, but from the perspective of business, as there are multiple businesses, and then when you're trying to make business with others, and they're saying, okay, where is your ISO certification, and where is your SOC 2, and where is your that and that and that. So there is a certain way to tell other people that, well, we don't really trust you, so we need to find out if you're complying with standards to find out if we can really make a business with you. And it's fine to a certain points, but I have seen it in multiple organizations that the standards are there because we do need a stamp, like a potato stamp, like, hey, we have ISO, we have that, but are we really following that standards, and do we really manage data this way? Well, that's another thing, because there is a responsibility of somebody else on the other side. And the bigger the organization, the responsibility most of the time is diluted. It's distributed among other people, and they're saying, yes, we got the controls. Oh, yes, we're compliant with that, but... And over the time, I do believe, right, as GDPR has claims that are coming up that are related with the personal data that were leaked, there is more money following up GDPR. So the fines are getting bigger and bigger. Right now, in regards to any other standards like, the ISOs and SOCs and so on, I haven't seen any fines so far. The more fines will be there, the more the organizations will have to follow it. And this is part of my latest, interest. But if you're thinking about ethical AI and the way you're approaching the decisions that are being made by the machine learning methods, sooner or later, there will be regulations that are related with that. So there is this trustworthy AI framework in European Union. Some of the countries are about to follow, but sooner or later, there will be money following. And that moment, from my perspective, will be the moment of the standards that will be real, because right now they're a little bit dead to me.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. So what do you think about the GDPR? Is it dead already, or it's like because I know
it's
that
alive.
It's alive,
some of
yes.
the companies then they don't follow, at least from my experience. They are like a big financial institutions. They usually care about GDPR, but the small startups, like there are even some of them that when I mention GDPR, it's the first time they hear it.
But it doesn't mean that they shouldn't follow. I mean, at some point, it will be a showstopper, a business stopper for them if they cannot adapt. It's like when you're a startup and you're saying, okay, let's forget about GDPR for a while. We're gonna follow up that problem later. Then sooner or later it will come to you, and then you need to adapt and follow the regulations or have enough money to pay the fine and then follow the regulations. Otherwise, you're dead. And for startup, it's much bigger risk than for organization that can actually pay the money. So if I were a startup, and I've seen multiple startups that's like, yeah, really GDPR is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mateusz actually on this one. There is a rule to follow, and totally agree with this fine statement, even though it sounds quite brutal. But sometimes that is the way to introduce, at least at the very beginning, some standards that we should follow. And yeah, we could of course say that a couple of things are irrelevant. We even like within the GDPR, some of the companies were complaining on that and so on. Yeah, that's fine, but that's what's the price of a standard. That a couple of things will be simply irrelevant, but at least most of the cases it's relevant and it's built by people that are also engaged in cyber and data protection and so on. So in vast majority of the rules that are there, it's going to be actually relevant, and that's what in my opinion GDPR is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Yes, Mateusz, I see that there is a question, so let me just quickly take a look. Stick is asking, do we need a driver's license for end users?
That's a kind of nice idea to actually have this kind of course that at least makes you that maybe people would like to take this kind of test or anything like that. I was once I wanted to use the stock exchange market app once, and I remember at some point they said like, we'll ask you a couple of questions about how stock market works, right? I'm not sure if you did this as well, but you have to answer a couple of questions, and they say, based on your answers, you will get the limit of 10,000, and that's all, right? Because it doesn't seem like you have a driver's license for stock exchange, right? And well, for me, it was kind of good idea that actually somebody cares that I will not now spend all of my money on bad decisions, right? So maybe this can be the same here. I was also thinking about at some point if developers or people that are creating software shouldn't have this kind of driver's license. This is the same that we have with the doctors. For example, you have to be this called regulation, right? So you have to be to have this papers to be a doctor, to be an architect, right? So the most important stuff around the world, actually, you have some kind of certificate to perform, right? So my question is maybe like dodging this question a little bit, but does actually people creating software should have this kind of driving license, because software becomes more and more important, like medicine and architecture.
Critical. Yeah. I have one more question regarding the standards, because I remember some time ago I had a conversation about defining overall company standards regarding quality, architecture, and so on. And I got a feedback that this can be some kind of a trap for a company, because people, whenever they have the list of standards, they will just follow only them. They will not think out of the box, right? So what's your idea, or what's your knowledge, or some kind of a hints how to avoid this kind of traps with having company standards? Mateusz, maybe?
I've had a really crash course on that when I was doing some projects in the US. And for me, one of the issues was like, okay, so there is NSA suit B, you shall be following this crypto and this crypto. And I was like, hey guys, this is not the strongest crypto. Why are you asking me to use that one for, some telemedicine data? Oh, this is in part of the standard, but well, it's not the best one. Why shall we use that? And that was really, starting the fire in the company to discuss, well, so what shall we use, and who makes a decision what shall we use, and is there anybody that really knows what is more or less secure? So I do believe from the perspective of any business that creating standards is a good baseline, but if there is nobody actually doing things like monitoring, hey, what do we have implemented in terms of crypto, of libraries, whatever, like, or of the software development lifecycle, and then asking the questions, so then it's really dead, because you're having a standard, but who enforces it and who monitors what you're actually having out there in your systems? So for me, this is a very active approach. Not sure if this is a CTO role or more a CSO role, but that's something that is part of creation, whatever your product you're delivering, to really keep in touch with what is the latest news, to see, hey, there is this old part of crypto that you need to take care about, I don't know, years ago, Heartbleed and things with SSL v3, and then you need to, see how the things will be changing. So from my perspective, the standards are great to have in the company, but they need to be updated and they shall be part of the software development lifecycle. So if you can automate it to the point where you're enumerating the CVEs or CWEs and then updating your projects accordingly to that, that's amazing. But I do believe most of the companies are far away from being that mature in regards to creating the solutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Paula, would you like add your comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the Mateusz points of view, because it is of course good, as good as the person who manages it. So it needs to be run through some filters of reasonability, as always. And I would rather see standards if we want really to have lots of them, and that's gonna assure our quality, as more of a sorry to put it this way, but maybe even like a marketing function, that if there's a list of standards that are there in cybersecurity, we are following all of them. Yeah, and that sounds good. Maybe these standards are not very demanding, but it's hard in a big organization to implement them so that they are not disturbing our work. As with everything, security is a very custom approach and requires a custom approach, and then these standards simply they have to be adjusted to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree. We should go. Usually, it's good to go with a baby steps. So first, introduce anything that we can actually follow, right? Because we can flood people with tons of standards and requirements, and they will just feel so overwhelmed that they will feel, oh my God, I will never follow that, and this will be the end. Or we can just think something that is really feasible, right? And maybe just focus that we really deliver this part, and then if this is already done, we can move to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much for your comment. So we already covered security awareness and the standards. Since we want to cover the topic of security strategy for digital products, I would like to focus a little bit on security aspects in software architecture. So my experience is that usually the clients comes to us asking about the security audit whenever the application is already done, developed. So personally, it's a little bit too late, right? So I would like to ask you to share your knowledge about the best practices, what we should do, how we should think, and at which stage about the security when we think about producing a digital product. Paula?
Yeah, okay. So that's the approach that we see, but it's not really the only approach. We also see the good approaches when the application is tested at multiple stages when it's developed. Yeah, and that's really what we would like to see as an external penetration testing company. Of course, there is a possibility to review the code as well from the security perspective, do the different security checks on various components of the code. So that's really the process how we grow the application. But from the external point of view that I've got while working with customers, then what we like to see is the application that is, of course, published, made available for us only just for the tests, And then we are going through 3, sometimes even 4 stages where this application is developed at the certain moments. And this is how this application is seen from the outside perspective. So that is the good approach, because every fix that we make, even though it is supposed to be fixed, is also bringing additional potential risk to the field. That application will just become vulnerable, but in a different way. So that is something that we have to predict.
Okay, and what if I have a limited budget? Because this is something that may stop us from doing this kind of recent checks.
Yeah, that very good question. Of course, as always, around the budget. Then, of course, we can plan some tests for later. So that is one of the first thing I would think, because again, we are minimizing the risk to the certain point, maybe to the certain point in budget. And then we accept the risk, and then we say that, okay, that's where we stop. This is what we can expect that can happen. On the other side, we build the infrastructure that also minimizes the risk, how that hack for the certain application could grow further. And then we are doing the test, for example, within the next year. Okay. Because it's hard to make cuts in security. I mean, it's maybe really inconvenient to say that budget really plays that role. But again, risk also plays the role. So that weight might be in favor for risk. So maybe it's not that bad.
So can I say that taking a shortcuts can backfire us later, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Mateusz, is there anything else you would like to add or share your experience, how to have a good approach to the software architecture? What we should consider, what kind of setup?
I do believe there are multiple things that are causing the managers, like the top managers or people that are especially managing budgets, to feel a little bit fuzzy about all of this. Because you can do pen testing. Will it make you secure? Well, not, but it will make you a bit more secure. You can change your software development lifecycle. Yes, it will make you more secure. You can buy certain vendors, set up the products. Perimeter is dead. You're not more longer thinking about the application from the external, internal perspective. There are changes in the way that you're building architecture for your product, and for that one I do believe thinking right now about zero trust for everything that's happening inside. It's like, whenever we went into clouds and went into the Kubernetes Docker microservices, we were starting with Chaos Monkey, and hey, Chaos Monkey is right now a standard. If it's not, well, think about it. And thinking from the security perspective, it's like a Chaos Monkey. What will happen if in here or out there in your services you're having an issue? Will you shut it down? Is there any dependency? How will you react as an organization? Hey, if this is really critical, we shall plan more pen testing for this specific part, and so on and so on. But I do believe that there are multiple issues with looking that directions, because most of the time there is also a limitation of the attention span for the top level managers, like the CEOs or people that are saying, okay, we want to spend that many millions on cybersecurity of our products. And they're like, okay, so what's the solution? Shall we do more pen testing? Shall we change the software development lifecycle? And the answer is everything. That's not the easy answer, because there are multiple changes that are still on the fly, and the more balls you're juggling really on the fly, the more difficult it is. So that's a very difficult role of the CTO in the organizations to say, hey guys, there is a level of security that we can bring you, but we also need to make sure that the organization is adapting to what is happening. We want to make sure that we're checking if we are up to date with everything. So yeah, there are no limits for the budgets, but you really need to be aware how do you spend your budget in order to stay alive in that game.
Okay, thank you very much, Marek.
Yeah, I very like your question, your answer. This is exactly what I am struggling with, is jiggling those balls, and I will say again that for me the most important thing is observability. So that actually from this helicopter view, I see what is happening, and I have proper metrics and proper stuff going on in the code, in the architecture, in the infrastructure, that I can really see what is happening there, what kind of versions do we have, what kind of libs do we have, what kind of risks do we have, and then you can make decisions on top of it. And usually it's also a very difficult conversation with the business that this should actually be a monthly budget, not a one-time budget. Because they say, okay, so make it secure. So make it secure, right? And so how much it will cost, right? Well, there is actually not the price tag on that, because this is something that you have to do constantly, right? I always compare it with working out on the gym, right? So you cannot like go there for 1 week and just make yourself a healthy man and then it's all. You have to like work out all the time, right?
Then you see the results, definitely. And Mateusz, you mentioned about some cloud solutions, and I'm wondering, because these days many companies build their solutions based on the clouds, right? And in my opinion, that's as a person who is not an expert, I would say, okay, if I go to cloud, then probably I will be secure because they will provide the security out of the box, right? So would you like to comment on that and give some advices, what we should avoid, what we should take a look at when going
yes,
to cloud?
The clouds are more secure. I'm kidding. That there is like the complexity of clouds is something that is probably over and beyond the imagination of some of the people. And the things that we're seeing over and over is like, it's not like clouds are more or less secure, because there are different risks or like the threat actors that you need to consider. And there are also some, privacy limitations. Like there is this Cloud Act, and it's a little bit spooky if you ask me about the opinion, but there are a lot of misconfigurations that are related with the clouds, and especially with the digital transformation. Companies are trying to speed up follow-up with the customers, be on the edge with the technology. And we see that as the cloud environment and the things that are provided out of the box, or the things that are managed, are increasing, there are more and more misconfigurations. So how do people react to that? They're throwing money and people with certificates into the problem, and they're like, okay, now we're cloud, we have multiple this cloud certified engineers, we shall be okay. Well, not really, because the misconfigurations will still happen, and what you're gonna do about it. And as I was listening to what Marek said, it really sounds like a human process, because you said you were asking or talking to people and so on. Luckily, we're on our way to automatize all of the processes, because there are more and more software that is doing some evaluation of the common mistakes in the clouds, in the configurations. So the software is already there. The point is like, not everybody knows about the software, or the budget is too high, or you're doing it once and then somebody reconfigures something later, and we have a race condition, and that's gonna be happening over and over again. So clouds are cool. I do love private clouds. I do love public clouds, but I do believe you really, there is a lot of hype in all of that. And in order not to fall with your business into the cloud mania, you really need to think about, well, there are new risks that are coming out there. Some of the clouds are having some certifications. So if you want a stamp like of the ISO and SOC and that, that's fine. Maybe you need it, but I still know some of the organizations are taking some of the threat actors too seriously to really go into cloud with their infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Paula?
Yeah,
What's
very
your
much
opinion
agree
on
with you. Yeah, absolutely. So there are no two companies or no two environments that are the same. And definitely there are no like one size fits all threat intelligence fit or solution. And moving to the cloud, it's definitely not, maybe it is a solution at the end, but it's not a way to say it. Yeah. So once we've got a problem, once, for example, we've got an incident, we can see that some of the organizations, they react to a security, like that kind of situations that they have experienced by just simply buying a tool, buying a solution, signing up somewhere and so on. And that results not only in big misunderstanding in between components that they use to manage the infrastructure, but also it's just an additional unnecessary spend of money that they could maybe spend better into first rethinking how they could integrate with cloud and what really cloud brings them. what is happening later is that we've got in our portfolio solutions that are simply impossible to manage, and they actually make security less effective because they do not cooperate with each other. Imagine we've got a customer, for example. That's what I'm thinking. Well, that's what happened this week. That came to us, and they've got Azure Sentinel, which of course it's great. But then they said that, okay, we've got all of this great stuff. Could you please, guys, review the logs, because we don't have a skill in place to actually do that. So this is one of these examples that they spent a lot of money on management, but they cannot operate on this. So where is the problem really? Yeah? So the problem is in the choice, in implementation, how it's done, and of course they know that they're supposed to build a better skill in house to manage this, but that takes time. So that's one perspective, and of course, what's added on the top of that is something that I would describe as a synchronicity problems. That if you got different vendors and the vendor upgrades applications, and then it appears that organization does not put that into the security flow because they've chosen so many solutions during the pandemic, and at the same time you've got upgrade that will just not cooperate with our choices. So that's more like generically saying, but that is something that also causes security issues. And I think, to be fair, that the biggest security vulnerability, it's not really vulnerability, except for Log4j, of course, that happens, but but it's a misconfiguration, because once we get solution systems to manage vulnerability, and Log4j, it's something that everybody is hearing about right now, then we still got solutions that when we connect the dots, that connection is actually vulnerable there. Yeah, so they might be all great, but when they communicate, there is a big deal. So yeah, there's this power of cloud, and also the mistakes that we make while we decide to move to the cloud without really analyzing what we got inside.
Yeah. Well, it was the same with Facebook. Like 1 month ago, there was this huge situation with Facebook, right? It was maybe more about safety than security, but those topics are somehow together, right? But basically, this is what Paula said, is that this was rather a problem of configuration on their side, that each of the elements of the system works perfectly well, right? But the general configuration of them working together was the problem, right? Yeah, and the same is with the cloud. I agree with you. Yeah, we call it, because we also do a cloud migrations, right? Clients approach us and say, hey, we want to migrate to the cloud, right? And basically, they are surprised that we, for example, say that this will last 5 months. Because this is a real migration to the cloud, right? Unless they just want something called a lift and shift, meaning that we just take exactly what they have and put it in ECS2, for example, right? But this is not really a cloud. It might be just like a first step, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it all depends on what you actually do on the cloud. But cloud gives you lots of opportunities, but you also have to use them.
Sure. Sorry, Marek. Sorry, guys, to cut you in, but we are running out of time, and I would like to ask one more question. So let's assume that I'm a company with some budget for the security, and I would like to invest it somehow. Can you just give me some hint? What is the smart investment in cybersecurity that I can make in next year, so I can get the most of it? Paula, would you like to?
Yeah, so from these investments, I would if there will be something that, like the priority, yeah, number one, I would rather focus on workstation security, because this is where all the threats start. Even on the chat, there was also the comment that phishing is like the thing that hits us all. And when we look into various reports, for example, the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, here we are able to see that phishing is indeed a #1 mean of transportation of an attack, but also of malware. And also we got the financial aspect of that, because like over 80, I think it was 86% of attacks are financially motivated, and that comes through user. So our question would be, what kind of steps we made to assure the workstation security, even though we might have different priorities, but that statistically, it's the biggest point of entry. So if we have not managed that, let's choose this one as this first step, again, to minimize the risk. So my investment advice would be to focus on workstations.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mateusz, how about you?
I just wanted to comment on the previous one, like that any system that is complex enough is not distinguishable from magic. So that's becoming more of a problem. Regarding the investments, it really depends where you are. Like what cybersecurity controls you're having, what investments you already have, and really this is this silly moment of saying, hey, a little bit of a due diligence. Do you have any controls? What would happen if, from the business perspective, that fails or that fails or that fails? And then looking for the things that can break your business up. I don't have that much insight into what it might be. I do believe that there are some very serious parts that are related with the zero trust or transforming your product, whatever you're doing, towards the zero trust, as that's one of the things that is becoming very hot. And I do really believe that's a head start for multiple companies that can provide products that way. But really, I'm not the best one to answer that unless we're gonna know what your business is doing and what you already have.
Thank you very much. Marek, is there?
I would probably suggest to start with people, as I already said. Some trainings for the people, for starters, maybe not sure how big investment they have, but usually good training for people, good awareness of people of the topic. I would say that this is the first step.
Thank you very much. So with this, we are getting to the end. So it's important, invest in people, build a security awareness. That's how I can summarize our main points. So thank you very much, Paula, for your feedback, your comments. I'm really happy that you joined us.
Thank you so much for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mateusz, for your comments, of course. And thank you, Marek. So we are getting till the end. So thank you very much to everyone who was listening us, and have a great afternoon.